We are here smack in the middle of the holiday season, and I'm sure you're thinking about decorating. This is a beautiful time, a joyous time, and also a chaotic time, and it can carry a little risk for seniors. So today's video is about how you can minimize your risk while you're decorating your home, while still keeping your home festive and joyful for the season. So the thing about decorating is it all starts out exciting and fun, and then suddenly you're on a step stool and you're falling, or you get tangled in lights and you trip. That's when it becomes an issue. So there is a way to decorate. You can do it safely and it'll be beautiful, and you won't be overdoing it and risking your safety. So before we get into the safety part, I want to talk about something a little bit more personal, and that is the emotional side of decorating. For most of us, decorating is emotional because it connects us, especially around the holidays. It connects us to those feelings that we had when we were, with family that maybe aren't here with us anymore, or back when we were younger and our kids were little. And we decorate because we want to recreate that feeling again, that emotion. So, the biggest part about learning how to decorate for the senior stage of our life is to learn how to adapt so that we can decorate without the risk. When we do decorate, there's a uh-oh zone, the risky zone. These are things like putting decorations up too high, causing you to have to get up on a step ladder or a step stool, something like that, in order to be able to put them up high. Then there are those things that are tripping hazards. Again, that string of lights that you're trying to wrap around the tree, or the tree skirt that goes under it, or things maybe you're working on decorations outside and you're putting them on steps, and then maybe if the steps are slippery because of ice, that kind of thing. The next risk is overexertion. How many times are you really during the year reaching for things or bending and twisting? Not many times during the year. And so when you start to pull out all of these boxes for decorations for the holidays, then that's when you start having muscle aches, and maybe you twist funny and you hurt a muscle, or it inflames your arthritis, or if you have mobility problems, then maybe you're moving differently than you're used to. So all of that carries a risk with it. And the last risk, really, especially around holiday decorating, relates to people who are in your home that maybe would have dementia or Alzheimer's, because of the sensory overload that's possible. Somebody with those conditions, if they're hearing too much music and the lights are blinking at the same time, and all these things, that sensory overload can really cause havoc for them. So knowing about these risks doesn't mean that you have to stop decorating. It just means that you have to maybe change up the way that you've always done things, again, to adapt to your new situation. So the thing to do is to focus on what means the most and let the rest of it slide. Just don't put it up. This makes me think of my parents. Every year when I was a child, when I was a young adult, they would have this 7-foot Christmas tree, and it was, so wide, and it had so many ornaments, and it was beautiful. But it got to a point where my mother had arthritis in her shoulders. She couldn't reach to put ornaments up anymore. It was my father trying to take the box down from the rack up on the ceiling of the garage, or having to put it back up there after the holidays were over. It just got to be too much for them. It was much easier for them to just get a smaller Christmas tree, like a 4-foot pencil tree type of a thing is what they ended up with. The tree was still pretty, but they didn't have to worry about going through all of those steps and days worth of work. So along those lines, here are some ways that you can make decorating for the holidays a little more comfortable. First is to have a chair nearby. That way you're not squatting down if you're putting something on low branches, or you're decorating, lower down on a bookcase or something like that. You can sit and be comfortable on the chair. The next thing to do is to use lightweight materials, something not heavy, obviously, like foam or styrofoam, something like that, if at all possible. Next is to avoid bending and twisting as much as possible, like reaching and twisting, over your head like that. You want to turn your whole body like I'm doing rather than just trying to reach just your arm over. The next way you can make it a little easier is not to do it all in one day. We have neighbors right now. She's just recovering from the flu and she wanted to get her Christmas decorations up as soon as possible. They did it all in one day, inside and outside. And I'm like, you're recovering from the flu, Amy. You need to take it easy. It's not a bad thing to spread it out. Do it over, several days rather than trying to do it as a decorating marathon. Another thing to help with the risk is to think about using those little grabber reacher type things, those extenders. That way, if there's something that you're putting up on a higher thing like the top of a bookcase or something like that, you're not having to climb up to put it up there if it's something that you can lift up with that reacher grabber. I will link to one down in the description below if you're wondering what I'm talking about. And as far as the storage boxes that all of these decorations come in, don't pick them up by yourself. Either ask for help or have the box where you can take some of the things out of it first and make it a little lighter before you try to move it. And also remember to bend at the knees when you're lifting it. Don't try to bend down, bend over and just pick up from your waist. You always want to pick up heavier things by bending at the knees. The next thing to remember is to make sure your floors are clutter free. So, like once you're putting up, for example, the Christmas tree, you're going to have a cord that's going to be on the floor attached to the electrical outlet. So you want to be sure that you want to be sure that that cord is not going to be a tripping hazard. It might be a good idea to take a step back and try to look at your home as if you were a guest in the home. Do you see tables that maybe, like a small table needs to be moved out of the way? Or do you see a floor rug that would be slippery that maybe needs to come up or be taped down? Do you see cords across the floor, like I was just mentioning, that need to be covered or moved or somehow taped down or something to keep them from being a tripping hazard? Also, something to remember, if you're using a cane or a walker, you want to be sure that you have plenty of clearance between furniture and decorations. So don't put your Christmas tree too close to, I don't know, your couch if you have to go in between the two of them. You want to be sure that things that are at arm level or at knee level are not in your way so you don't bump them as you go by. Now, going back to those cords on the floor that I was talking about a minute ago, um, if that is a problem for you, you can get battery operated lights now, and that way there are no cords. It may be that you have to change the batteries out more often or that kind of thing, but at least it's not a tripping hazard for you. As long as we're talking about decorating for the holidays and the risks that are associated with that, that makes me think of fire risk. So you want to be very careful with, you don't want to use any cords that have frayed wires. You want to be careful that, you use flameless candles that run on a battery rather than an actual candle that's lit, because if you forget to blow that candle out or, it's near something that catches on fire, you want to eliminate that risk with battery powered candles. And again, I will link to those. They have some beautiful ones now. And I will link to those down in the description as well. So other tips, you don't want to string more than three strings of lights together. You want to keep all of your decorations at least 3 feet away from a candle, any type of open flame like a fireplace, any space heaters, anything like that. If your greenery or your Christmas tree is real, be sure to keep them watered as much as possible so that they don't dry out, which would then, of course, make them more of a fire hazard. And also, you want to be sure to unplug any of your lighted decorations before you leave the house or before you go to bed so that you don't have an issue with possible electrical arcing and starting a fire that way. So circling back to dementia and Alzheimer's, as I was saying before, for those people, having a lot of decorations and a lot of noise and a lot of things that are blinking and that kind of thing, that can be very disorienting for them, and it can be sensory overload. So here are some things to keep in mind and to do if you do have someone in your home who is suffering from cognitive decline. First, stick with consistent decor. So it's helpful for them if the decor that you put up is something that has a memory attached to it. They would remember from seasons gone by. The next thing, as I mentioned, is to avoid blinking lights. Have just a steady light on. And you also want to maybe be careful about having the multicolored lights. It's better usually for them if it's a solid color light. So just a string of white lights or just a string of red light. And really your decor through the house shouldn't have a lot of contrast to it either for them. It's better if you have mostly consistent colors. So if you're decorating for Christmas, try to keep the majority of your things red or green rather than, pop of blue, pop of yellow, pop of green, pop of red, which can again be overstimulating. And the last thing to keep in mind is, as long as they are able, involve that person in the decorating. If there are things that they can help to put up that, are lightweight and not breakable, depending on what stage of dementia they're in, then have them decorate. They're going to be happy that they were productive, and it'll be satisfying for them to be taking part in this rather than just sitting on the couch and watching it done. And it'll make them feel like they're connected to you and the home. So the next thing I want to talk about is the emotional pressure that we feel when the holidays roll around, and how we feel like we have to go over and above, because we love the holidays. And I get that because I love the holidays myself. But there comes a time when maybe less is more. I know I'm thinking myself that this year I may not even put up a tree. This is a shorter season between Thanksgiving and Christmas this year. And so I don't know if I want to go through all of the hassle of putting up a tree and all the things that go with it. You may not feel the same, but if you're feeling guilty because you really feel like I do and don't want to go, whole hog on everything, then this is your permission to be able to slow down and reduce the amount that you're putting up. It is okay if your decorations look different this year. It is okay if you don't use every single ornament and tchotchke you have. And it is okay if you ask somebody or hire somebody to help you. We have neighbors who hire somebody now to put up the lights on the outside of the house because they're two sisters that live together and they don't want to get up on a ladder, so they pay somebody to hang the lights. That is okay to do. What this all means is that you're just creating a new and different tradition, and that does not make it any less meaningful. So another way to help to reduce your risk of decorating is to make it a fun event. Maybe you have your grandkids come over and help you decorate, or you have a hot chocolate bar and have neighbors over to help you with your decorating as well, and you turn it into a festive occasion. It makes decorating a little safer, and you get to share the experience. Once the season ends and you have to pull all that decor down, there's some more risk involved. So here are some things that can make it a little bit less risky, a little more safe for you. The first thing is to make sure that when you pack a box that it's not too heavy. And you take the heavier boxes and you put them lower down on the storage shelf. I know that sounds obvious, but I have found that sometimes people will put things on shelves based more on space. And so they try to ram something in higher than they shouldn't be lifting that high, but that's the space that fits the box. And so they're trying to ram that in there, and just don't do that. Try and organize it in clear plastic bins so you can see what's inside. And then again, try to keep them not as heavy and more consistent shapes so that they fit well on the space together, on the shelf together. And last but not least on that, declutter as you go. Instead of trying to say, I'll just put it away, I'm tired of all of it. I'll do it next year when I pull everything out. It just doesn't get done. So take a few extra minutes, declutter the things that you're not using anymore now as you're putting things away. And then that way it will be easier for you next year when the next season rolls around. So decorating your home should really lift your spirits. It isn't about trying to do as much work as possible to get the house to look festive for the season. You can accomplish the same thing by having less in the way of decorations, and it's less risky for you, less to worry about putting away in the end, and less stressful in general. So take a step back, ask yourself, am I overdoing it? Remember that beauty does not come from quantity, it comes from intention. And even by having more minimal decorations this year, your house will still look festive and beautiful, and it will be cozy, and the holidays will be bright. So thanks so much for watching. Happy holidays to you, and until the next video, take care. Bye.